Okay. So I'm re-recording a post that I did earlier because I was distracted and I could see it when I looked at it on the back end. But I wanted to speak to the pro-democracy people in America, traditional mainstream media, but also Democratic, independent, third party, and non-MAGA Republicans. Right now, the orange terrorist leader, serial rapist, convicted felon, retiree from Florida, who's living in the White House, his regime, and that's just my phraseology of speaking to who he is, wants to jail duly elected members of Congress who are Democrats. They've they have not committed a crime. They were doing their constitutional and statutorily allowed duty to inspect activity that's taking place at a facility that is utilized with federal dollars that they appropriate through an agency that Congress created. Congressional members have the right to do physical site inspections. This is not abnormal. It's not what the DHS secretary said in terms of it being, or the attorney general for that particular district, New Jersey, Alina Habba. It's not they were storming the building or they were trying to break in. Those are all lies and bullshit. It was their duty to inspect a private facility that has a contract with the federal government that's in a city where it's not for sure if they are following city law, county law, and state law regarding occupancy, zoning, and other requirements. Just because a private contractor gets a contract with the federal government, that doesn't mean that their space where they're doing the work for the federal government becomes federal land and is somehow exempt to the rules of zoning and building compliance and safety that are required of every other property in a city, a village, a township, a county, and a state. I mean, this is just what it is. So to sit there and say that them going there was something improper, or that the mayor of the city where this facility is operating in wanting to go there is improper is bullshit. This building operates in his community. It has to comply with the laws of Newark, New Jersey. It doesn't get a free pass. There is no exemption or free pass that Donald Trump can do. And that's who I meant when I said orange terrorist leader, serial rapist, convicted felon, retiree, because January 6th was a terrorist attack. I have an article that a couple papers I wrote on that in terms of what it was and how we have to call it what it was, but then also how the MAGA movement has a paramilitary arm within it, similar to the IRA and Sinn Féin during the Troubles in Northern Ireland back from the 50s through, well, not 50s, but from the 60s all the way through the mid 1980s. But I digress. So these folks they've arrested the city mayor, they already arrested the judge a few weeks ago, and they now want to arrest members of Congress. And not one of the MAGA elected officials in Congress has said anything in defense of their colleagues. The same people who talk about them with respect and can call them colleagues, some of them call them friends. These people who are on the MAGA side have not said a damn thing that's a bridge too far. So, my question to pro democracy elected officials, pro democracy administrative officials, and I also want to throw this out here to people some people I know, some people I don't, but I respect. People like Gretchen Whitmer, who I've known for a while now, who's the governor here in Michigan, who I think is a good governor and a good person. And I know she's trying to do the right things, but she's trying to engage with people who have who actively rooted for her to be kidnapped and murdered by MAGA terrorists. Or Gavin Newsom, the governor in California, Democratic governor, or other people who are elected and try to engage these folks. Why are you still trying to engage these people? What is the purpose here? What's the expectation of a positive outcome? These people are supportive of you being jailed, of you being prosecuted, of them actually weaponizing the government against non MAGA Americans. And these people have never respected any of the 75 million, 17,613 Americans who voted for Vice President Harris, the 82 million, good Lord, I'm forgetting the number, 81 million, 268,924 who voted for President Biden, the 2.9 million who voted third party in 2020, 2,900,034, 934,000, and then the 2,913,100, no, 18,103 who voted third party in this particular election. They don't respect any of those voters. They don't see any of those voters as people, as human beings. They talk shit about us as voters, as people, as Americans constantly. They talk about the states, the 19 states that voted for Hillary Clinton, President Biden, and Vice President Harris in DC like they are hellscape demon places. They demean the states that may have voted for Trump in 2024, but like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that have Democratic governors, have Democrats in control of one of the legislative branches in two of those states. In Georgia, where you have Democrats who are the US senators. In Nevada, where every other elected office except for governor is a Democrat. And in Arizona, where every office except for the superintendent of public education is a Democrat at the state level. So these are all states where Democrats either control or have had significant. Oh, and I forgot North Carolina, where every constitutional office that's statutorily statewide elected, except for the auditor, is a Democratic Party member. So all these states, even though those seven voted for Trump, those states either are currently controlled by Democrats, have Democrats elected across the board, but they demean us too. So why are you trying to work with the people who see you as nothing and treat you like shit? Look, guys, I'm a two-time divorcee. My second ex-wife was really great to Jamel. And Jamil's my son who's deceased. I have two sons. I'm a father, 10th generation African American citizen, love our country, but also believe in loving our country, just like in loving and being a parent, you have to be able to address failures, issues, challenges. You can't hide shit. So, in both of those marriages, with the first ex wife and the second ex wife, when things are going downhill, I try to make those things work to the best of my ability. But ultimately, when it was over, it's over. Only so many times somebody could tell you you're no good, you're evil, you're all this stuff, and you accept that. So this is to the pro-democracy elected officials. This is to the voters who voted for a Gretchen Whitmer, who voted for Josh Stein, who voted for Tony Evers, who voted for President Biden, voted for Hillary Clinton, voted for Vice President Kamala Harris. Why are you still trying to engage and deal with people who think you're not shit? Why? You're not going to get anything that you can trust out of these people. They're not going to do anything good policy wise. They're not going to do anything good in statutory law, in appropriations, in anything. Everything that they do is structured on punishing us and using government to attack us. And this instance right here, wanting to arrest Democratic elected officials of Congress, arresting a Democratic elected mayor. Do they understand on the MAGA side that over 70 million Americans voted for Democratic candidates for Congress? So the members that they want to throw in jail, they represent Americans. So you're telling those Americans that their representation and their votes were meaningless. But you guys who represent them, and this is, Brother Hakeem, Brother Chuck, come on. Why are you still trying to deal with these people who hate us? Why are you still trying to find some common ground? There is no common ground. If they can't come and respect us as Americans, as people, as fellow citizens, as parents, as mothers and fathers, as husbands and wives, as business owners, as taxpayers, as contributors to this society, if they want to use government to put us in jail, use government to tell us we can't speak because somehow our speech, since it's non MAGA, is anti American, it's woke, it's all this other bullshit. Why are you still trying to find a common ground with them? You can still do your job, still work for the betterment of America, and not engage those people, not sponsor bills with them, not try to find bipartisanship with them. Bipartisanship is dead. It's not going to come back. Cross partisanship, where you have opportunities with people like Elisa Murkowski, who's a non MAGA Republican. You have independent elected officials. You have Phil Scott, the governor in Vermont, who is a Republican, a real Republican. Larry Hogan, Charles Baker, former governors in Massachusetts and Maryland, real Republicans. Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger. You have independents. You have people in the third parties, like the Green Party and other parties and Democrats. That's where you can build cross partisan partnerships. Look at Alaska. Alaska's House and Senate has a cross partisan coalition majority that includes Democrats, non MAGA Republicans, and third party and independent elected members to the state House and the state Senate. That's the real opportunity to work for the betterment of America. But you can't find bipartisanship with somebody who is rooted in a belief that you don't matter. And I say this in terms of why I say these people believe that you don't matter. Because who of them is Jim Jordan, is Mike Johnson, is Steve Scalise, is John Thune, is John Barrasso, Rafael Eduardo Cruz, are any of them, Tom Cotton, are any of them going to say to the regime that coming after you personally is a bridge too far? They're not. And don't believe them when they tell you on the back end, well, I really don't believe in any of this stuff. And I'm just doing this because I have to stay in office and it's part of the performance. That's bullshit. This ain't part of the performance. This is what they believe and they act on it. They are not your friends. They are not your allies. They are not people that you can trust. When Trump sends what he's trying to turn the FBI and ICE and other agencies into his version of a Gestapo or his version of Stasi, which was the East German police, or KGB from the old Soviet Union, and they come for you like they're talking about right now through the Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman. None of those people are going to say a damn thing. All that friendship's going to go out the window. Some of them are going to actually cheer. And you know where I can point to a real example of this? In 2019, when it was found that Trump's DOJ was spying on then Congressman Adam Schiff, excuse me, I'm sweating a little bit, and Congressman, now he's US Senator Adam Schiff, and Congressman Eric Swalwell, they didn't say anything about that being wrong. They lied about Democratic presidents and Democratic administrations doing stuff like that, but we've never done that. We have to be that clear. That's never happened. If somebody that's a Republican or a MAGA Republican has committed crimes or has been accused and there's enough where a grand jury has indicted them, that's going through the actual process. This ain't going through the process. This is making up bullshit. Looking at a video, trying to say that, well, the video isn't what it is, and trying to use any sort of crazed justification to say that, well, because 77 million people voted for this man, that the 75 million who voted for Vice President Harris, the 2.9 million that voted for third party, and the 1,398,098 who voted down ballot and didn't vote for the presidential part of the ballot, we don't matter, even though we're the majority. We're 80 million to their 77 million. I'm sorry, we're 79 million to their 77 million. So we're the majority, but we don't matter. The only people that matter are their voters. And a lot of their voters, his voters, aren't down with that. 20 to 25% aren't down with this either. But they will say that this is okay. This is what you wanted. No, as a 10th generation citizen whose family's been here since we were stolen from Madagascar on my mother's side and brought to South Carolina in roughly 1725, 300 years this year, I think I got a little bit more claim to say that's not American and that's not America. And what you're doing is not acceptable. So we can fight back, fight around without aiding and abetting. We don't have to give them any room for any grace that any of the things that they're doing might have any justification. The things that they're doing that are illegal, that are unconstitutional, are exactly what they are. They have to be called out like that, but we have to isolate them, take away the levers of legitimacy in terms of engaging them, doing joint press conferences with them, sponsoring bills with them, appearing on shows, talking about bipartisanship. These are the same people that are be okay with you going to jail, that were okay with Congressman Swalwell and Senator Schiff being spied on by the first Trump regime and said nothing. These are not your friends. These are the spouses who hate you and haven't put anything in your drink yet or cut the wires to your brakes in your car yet. But if something happened, they're not going to feel bad about it. So all I'm saying is this: there's nothing that has to be done that has anything to do with any sort of nefarious activity. What I'm proposing is legitimate disengagement with these people because they're not your friends, and building within the coalition, the cross partisan coalition, and doing things within that coalition and buttressing within that coalition at state level and at the congressional level and working from there, because there's nothing that we can gain in this world when these people have such little regard for us as Americans as well, till they want to jail us. They've deported American citizens. They want to put elected members of Congress in jail. They wanted to throw out 65,000 people who voted, including the parents of the elected Democratic member of the Supreme Court in North Carolina. They wanted to throw her parents' votes out. And her parents are multi-generational American citizens. This is the landscape of what we're dealing with. We have to work from that truth and build a winning strategy for America that will benefit people who do agree with that. But we don't have to work with them to get to those positive outcomes. We can work with those who are willing. And lastly, I use this analogy sometimes, but we're in a horror movie. And for all intents and purposes, MAGA is Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger. Some of you all in the pro democracy camp want to argue within each other or say that certain groups aren't doing everything they should be doing, or certain people aren't putting up to support each other in the ways they should, and maybe some groups are just as bad as the other side. No. Look, Freddie, Michael, and Jason have formed a pact in the horror movie to kill us. You need to work with any and everybody who's trying to make sure that you survive through the end of the movie. Every person that's trying to make sure that you survive to the end of the movie is an ally, regardless of if you disagree. You know what? You can fix the mental health system in the second movie that failed Michael Myers, that failed Jason Voorhees, and that couldn't rehab Freddy Krueger from his, violent tendencies. You can fix that on the back end after we've survived the movie. But right now, we got to survive the movie, which means we got to work with Jamie Lee Curtis, Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasant, any of the other folks, John Saxon, the police chief in the beginning of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. We got to work with everybody that's willing to help us, because that's the team that will make sure that we have a world we can all live in that's free, fair, and not with a gun pointed to our head like this MAGA regime is doing right now. So I wanted to put that on wax, if you will, using an old school rap term, so that, because I've written about this, but sometimes I don't think putting it in word and prose gets through. So hopefully, and I usually like to do this with people, but we're in a real time. And when I saw the headline that ICE is really going to and wants to arrest sitting members of Congress on lies, I'm just like, we got to stop normalizing and working with these people who say nothing when their team wants to put us in jail and we haven't committed any crime, but then they want to free people on their team who have actually committed crimes and say that because they went through the process and were found to have committed the crime, that somehow that's unfair, that that's bad policy, that that's weaponizing against it. Ain't nobody weaponized a damn thing against them. They're doing it to us every single day, and we need to call it out exactly as it is. They're lying, we're telling the truth. All right.